All right, so finally we're back to wrap up season 1 of TEACUP with episodes 7 and 8. As always, I know a lot of people weren't really feeling the show. I think the show is pretty decent. What I don't like about the show, though, is that I don't like the fact that they've moved so far away from the horror aspect of the show. It seems like the only real horror aspect of the show is, walking across the barrier. And then watching people get crazy, mutilated, and deformed and all of that crazy stuff. But after that point, it kind of falls back into the more sci-fi, family drama route, which isn't bad, but I felt like I really wanted more horror from the show. So hopefully season 2 can give us more of that if the show gets renewed. But as always, let's get into the recap. So anyway, episode 7 begins with showing us McNabb out in the woods. If we remember last episode, they were looking for him, and we find out that he's out in the woods, fainted on the ground. It looks like McNabb is at a point where he's ready to give up hope and he's ready to just walk across the barrier and end it all. But it looks like a light bulb goes off and he remembers that he gave Travis the veil of the rainbow liquid. So instead of just giving up and deciding to just end it all, he remembers that he has that. Then back over at the farm, we see Maggie, Valeria, Nicholas, and everyone else just sort of waiting around for the assassin to be revealed. And during this time, it's already a little bit of foreshadowing because Valeria seems to be acting weird. Because although Nicholas is guarding Arlo's room, Valeria seems to be waiting outside of Merle's bedroom, but she also has some cereal, but then she also has a knife. And she does seem to be acting a little weird. So I'm just saying it seems like a bit of foreshadowing to me. Then back outside with Donald, James, and Ruben, Donald's starting to question himself, like maybe it's not a good idea to burn a fire because no one's really going to think anything of it. So then they're like, hey, let's throw a tire on the fire, make it black, and then maybe that'll make people think differently about it. But honestly, the truth of the matter is that starting a normal little fire isn't really going to get anyone's attention. I mean, let's be honest. Nobody's really going to think anything's wrong or like it's a real smoke signal. They'll just be like, oh, somebody's burning something. Plus, that fire would probably have to realistically burn for days before anyone would really think that something is truly wrong, if anyone sees it at all. So yeah, I got to go against Donald on this one. I don't think that was ever really a great idea. It's pretty damn useless if we're being honest. During this time, Ruben seems to have a better idea, so he heads to the stables. Donald follows him over there because he's a little suspicious that he might be the assassin. But Ruben's like, hey, I'm going where I'm going. I think that'll be more useful. And then Donald follows him. And of course, Ruben has the idea to burn down the rainbow tree. Then back over by the fire, James is there by himself, and then Maggie walks over to join him, and then they discuss how resuscitating someone after drowning them, how that might be something that they may end up having to do. So they discussed that as well. Then back outside of Arlo's room, Nicholas and Merle learn a little bit more about the resistance, the people online in the chat rooms who know about the aliens and who are ready to fight against them. They learn about this through McNabb's journal because he seems to have a lot of information laid out in there, which is good for our characters here because they get to learn a lot more. This is a little bit clever and more of an efficient way to get across some exposition without having someone else explain it to us. So, I'll take that. Then back over at the neighbor's place, Donald and Ruben attempt to burn down the silo to burn down the rainbow tree. But before we get to see what happens, we end up cutting away. Then back over at the farm inside the house, Nicholas and Merle learn a little bit more about the assassin and how the aliens get to move from person to person through their mouths. So there goes confirmation on that. And then once again, like you guys already know, that's why the humans who aren't aliens wear the mask, who are aware of what the aliens can do. Then after that, Merle walks in to check on Arlo and finds out that he has drawn a map to something, but we don't get to find out what just yet. Then we cut back to the neighbor's place with Donald, Ruben, and then McNabb, who shows up eventually, as he sees that they're trying to destroy the tree, but as we already know, the tree cannot be destroyed this way. It can only be taken down from the person who put it up. We learned this much earlier in the season. But McNabb holds up the veil of the rainbow liquid and tells them that it can't be destroyed, but there is another way. There is something else they can do. Then we cut back to Arlo and Merle, where we find out where the map leads to. The map leads to Belknap Mountain in New Hampshire. What is in Belknap Mountain, New Hampshire? We don't fucking know yet. But during the time while Merle and Arlo are in there trying to figure out the map, Valeria walks up and tells Nicholas that she knows who the assassin is and how they need to run outside real quick so she can tell him. Yeah, Nicholas, that doesn't sound weird at all, huh? Yeah. Now, of course, since this is Nicholas's mom, he probably doesn't really want to question this situation very much, but the logic of it just doesn't really make sense. But this is something that you would overlook if this was your parent. So, yeah. And then the episode ends with a pretty damn crazy conclusion, which is Nicholas finds out that his mom was the assassin who transfers to him and then pushes her across the barrier. Holy shit. That was pretty wild. I must admit, that was pretty crazy. And as crazy as that was, I must admit that I'm not too broken up by seeing Valeria's death. I think I kind of mentioned how I wouldn't mind seeing that anyway during the last recap. So there we go. Valeria's gone. Now, of course, that was pretty crazy, but as we can see that this episode was mostly filler, so as always, let's go ahead and cover the next episode. So episode 8 starts off with showing us some strange woman who digs up a bag out of the ground and jumps on a phone call and tells the person on the other end to tell her where McNabb is. So it doesn't really seem like this person is someone who's actually coming to help him. But let's see how it goes. So picking things right back up where they left off, McNabb tells Ruben that he thinks that there is just enough of the rainbow liquid in the veil for him to walk over to the tree, break off just one piece because that's all they need to get everyone else across the line. But what's in the veil is not enough to cross the line, which sort of begs the question, why in the hell did he give it to Travis in the first place? But then again, maybe that's why he gave it to Travis in the first place. But at least McNabb kind of knew that it would possibly be enough to put in a jar and then have plenty more. So I actually think that this aspect of the show is pretty cool. I mean, once you find a tree, you do need to be able to get to it without completely dying, because Ruben did have a tough time getting the piece off the tree. At least, you know, once you have it, at least possibilities of getting certain things done are now possible. I mean, you have a lot more options now. Then back over at the farm with James and Maggie, James reveals to Maggie that he cheated because he wanted to feel like he had some sort of control. Yeah, terrible excuse, James. Jesus. Then shit starts to heat up as we jump back to Merle and Arlo, as Merle looks out of the window and she's being called outside by the new assassin Nicholas. Which of course he gets her close enough, jumps over to her body, and then she takes a rock and knocks his ass out. I mean, there is a lot of jumping going on in this finale. Shit's starting to get a little exciting. But luckily though, during this time, Arlo and Harbinger are looking out of the window and they see the switch happen, so Arlo takes off. Luckily during this time, Arlo is able to warn James and Maggie, and once Merle comes back in the house, they're able to take her, drown her ass, and go through the whole instruction procedure thing. While James and Maggie are struggling to get Merle in the bathtub, here's where Donald and the others show up and they're able to help Nicholas and go over to Ellen and Arlo over in the barn. Now during this time, Maggie is able to successfully resuscitate Merle, but somehow the alien ends up successfully jumping over to James. Now we know that this is because he took his mask off, but for some reason it seemed to take a little bit longer than it does with everyone else. So we're really not sure why that was the case. Then back outside by the barn, everyone is finally preparing to escape, and unfortunately during this time, Nicholas gets to see his mutilated mom on the other side of the barrier, which is, yeah, that's pretty fucked up. Then back inside, we see Merle and Maggie take off outside of the house, and then we see the new assassin James is following them. That's until he is redirected towards Arlo, who's outside yelling, trying to get his attention. Now unfortunately for the show, this is where things get a little stupid, because after Arlo leads assassin James over to the stables, Maggie and Arlo end up working together to trap James inside of the ice box, and before this happens, she hits him with a syringe in the side, which I guess that's gonna sedate him, I suppose. But they have this little exchange before Maggie is able to push James into the ice box, and they are definitely close enough in this moment for James to jump to Maggie, but unfortunately, which isn't really unfortunate, but for some reason this doesn't occur. He doesn't jump to her, although he's definitely close enough to do so. It's kind of weird. It's kind of stupid. Plus, she's also able to overpower him during this time, which I guess that part isn't really that unbelievable because she did just hit him with a syringe full of drugs. So it makes sense that he would be a bit weakened. But the fact that the alien didn't take that opportunity to jump into Maggie was just really strange. But anyway, Maggie, Merle, Ruben, and Arlo, they're all able to successfully trap the new assassin James inside of the icebox, and then they all go outside and drink some of the rainbow liquid and they all cross. Ellen is the only one who stays behind to watch out for James to make sure that he stays trapped while they try to go out into the real world and try to get this shit solved, I guess, so they can save him. Now it is kind of funny that they're all able to drink just enough of the rainbow liquid to make it across the barrier. I do wish that we could have seen at some point in time throughout the show where someone drinks not quite enough of the liquid and cross the line and dies, because it seems like they made that out to be such a big deal in the beginning of the show. It's like if you don't drink enough, you'll die when you walk across the barrier, and if you drink too much, you'll still die. So it seems like the amount in which they drink has to be like just right, and it's kind of funny that they're able to get it just right with everyone who ends up leaving the house. There's no real threat, there's nothing for them to really worry about. Everyone just happens to drink just enough to cross the barrier and leaves. So at this point in the show, it's like, what was the whole point of the whole fear mongering thing, because it seems like the whole drinking the necessary amount of the rainbow liquid thing was never really that important to begin with, because we never see anyone die by not drinking enough or drinking too much. We actually don't see this happen at any point in time. The only time we ever see anyone consume too much of the rainbow liquid and dies is what we see that happens out in the forest with the forest animals. Beyond that point, we never see anyone else drink too much and then try to cross the line and then die, which would have been nice to see because it would have reiterated that whole threat situation. But now that just seems like it was useless. So they all end up jumping in the van that the assassin arrived in, and Maggie says for now they'll head over to the fire station in New Hope. And also what's still sort of weird during this time is that Donald points out the fact that his phone still doesn't work, that it still doesn't have signal, which is kind of interesting. And also, I guess once you drink the liquid, I guess anything you're wearing is also okay once you cross the line with it. Now, I'm not really going to dig into the whole drinking enough and crossing the line thing too deeply, but it's like, oh, okay. So basically anything you're wearing, anything in your pockets, anything you have on you, once you have drank enough of the rainbow liquid, you can just freely cross the line. And then at the end of the episode, as they're leaving out, the mysterious woman from earlier in the episode comes across McNabb and the others and stops them. And she tells McNabb that she's been following him from the chat room and that she is there to help and that she will follow them to the fire station, but just one thing before they go. And then she reaches in her bag, but as she reaches in her bag, Hayden shows up in that fly-ass Pontiac Firebird and damn near runs both of their ass over, slamming them out of the road. Then he jumps out of the car with some woman cool as shit, and the woman tells them that the people who they just were with cannot be trusted. So either those people were also assassins, or more than likely those were people who are actually on the side of the assassin, meaning that they are for the aliens taking over, which if you really think about it, it makes perfect sense. Of course, there's going to be humans that side with the evil aliens, the same way there's going to be humans that side with the good aliens. Some people are going to feel like it's better if they just took over the world, and others are going to feel like, oh, well, we don't want to be enslaved by aliens. We don't really want this shit to happen to us. But anyway, the woman gives her speech about how they all need to team up and work on this shit together. And also we find out earlier that the aliens are located within Becknap Mountain, which is where they're sleeping, awaiting to be awakened. So apparently they need to get there in time so Arlo can shut down some sort of machine and end this shit before the invasion happens, before they wake up and just take over. And yeah, and that's how season 1 ends. And my thoughts on season 1, as I've already told you guys, I feel like it's not a bad show. I think they definitely need to pick up the action for season 2 for sure. If it's too many dramatic moments and shit like that, I do not think I'll be that interested. I'm not sure if it will be able to hold my interest. But from the way things ended and now seeing that they also need to watch out for other people within the world, certain people still can't be trusted, like it's going to span now beyond just the aliens being the problem. Also, some people are in cahoots with the evil aliens that are going to be helping them. That's going to make things a lot more interesting once they're out in the real world trying to make it to the mountain. So yeah, let's see where things go. As always, guys, let me know your thoughts down below about what you thought about the show. Did the finale really do it for you? Are you looking forward to a season 2? Or are you like, oh, okay, I can take it or leave it? It wasn't really that interesting. Curious to know you guys' thoughts down below. But as always, guys, thank you for watching.